Basically, all cars went up in value during the last 2 years. However, we can see now that price trends are flattening and in some cases even turning from positive to negative. So what cars might hold their value when the market goes south? I guess we can all think of some crazy expensive, super rare cars that are relatively unaffected by normal market fluctuations. But let's be honest, they are out of reach for most of us. Therefore, I chose to list 6 cars that are relatively cheap compared to the other cars that I usually analyze on the channel. But in line with the channel's focus, I mainly included sports cars and one SUV. Let's start by having a look at the first one, the Alfa Romeo 4C. Over here we have the US 4C market and we can see that it currently consists out of 45 cars. And out of those, there are only 3 launch editions for sale. A 4C tends to cost $66,500, but there are big differences between the model years. High mileage older cars go for $60,000, while young cars can go for $90,000. Now when we look at the value development, I think that it's most promising for the older cars. New 4Cs tend to lose quite a bit of money, while older values have been quite steady. Looking at the price development for the used 4Cs, we can see that the market is up by 36% since March 2020. And with that, they definitely rank in the upper part of the market increases. Yet, if you are a subscriber to this channel, then you know that this price trend over here resembles the market trend. A strong increase during last year, followed by a topping pattern. So why might values be strong when the market goes down? Well, to start with, the 4C focuses on a very niche market, the one for hardcore car enthusiasts. Despite the many quirks it has, the 4C has a strong customer base that is unlikely to change drastically in the near-term future. This car is bought with the heart and not with the head. And that is where its strength lies. Moreover, we're unlikely to see anything similar from Alfa Romeo in the future. Hence, supply is limited and the customer base consists out of hardcore petrol heads who mainly buy it for emotional reasons. And that's also what we can see when we look at the mileage sensitivity. Over here we have the mileage to price relationship for the used cars and we can see that the initial drop is actually quite steep. We already saw before that the price decrease from new was quite high. However, after 20,000 miles the value decrease becomes smaller and smaller, and this is of course a natural pattern, but the differences over here between the mid and high mileage cars are quite small. Yet, there's one risk that we need to account for. We can namely see that used car supply is slowly creeping up, while new car supply is now basically non-existent. And naturally, if used car supply continues to increase, it might have a negative effect on the prices. And with that, it's time to have a look at the second car, a car that hasn't featured yet on the channel, the Ford Focus RS. Over here we have again the US market and you can see that there are only 67 clean title cars for sale, and this is very little for a hot hatch. Prices are a lot lower than for the 4C, as a Focus RS will cost you around $36,000. If we look then at the value development over time, we can see that prices are only 3% higher than 1 year ago, and hereby the price trend deviates from the rest of the market. So why might values be more stable when the market goes down? First of all, the RS label has a strong fan base, and as of now it seems that there won't be a new Focus RS, ever. Hence, just as in the 4C market, supply is limited. Moreover, in Europe you can see now that once these cars are bottomed out, they slowly start to increase. Values for the previous generation RS and even the ones before that were already increasing before the pandemic started. I see no reason why this wouldn't apply to the current generation, especially since it's the last one. And with that, it's time to move on to the last car. But before we do so, if you enjoyed this video, please support the channel by clicking on the like button down below. Thank you. The next car on the list is the Porsche Boxster, and especially the 986 and 987 generations. Over here we have the current market split by generation and by model type. Compared to the Focus RS, there are cars that are much cheaper and cars that are much more expensive. We can identify 3 price categories. 986s cost $18,000, a 986.1 around $24,500 and a 987.2 around $37,000. So the premiums for the younger cars are high, very high, but there are of course good reasons for it. Now also within each of these 3 price segments there's a lot of variation. We have of course the model type that makes a difference, the transmission, but also the state of the car. And the latter especially applies to the 986 market. A clean 986 Boxster starts to be rare. When we look then at the value development over time, we can see that prices remain stable or even increased. Compared to 1 year ago, the 986.1 increased by 13.3%, the .2 by 0.6%, the 987.1 lost 2% and the 987.2 gained 13.4%. So again, why might values be more stable when the market goes down? First of all, like with all other cars we talked about, supply is limited. There won't be any new 986 or 987 Boxsters that are entering the market. On top of this comes that the 986 is a really old car and that supply for the well-maintained examples is even lower than the already low supply level. Second, I think the demand for these cars will always be strong. Especially the 986 and the 987.1 are priced relatively low and with this price point offer an accessible way to enter the sports car and the Porsche world. That is, if we forget about the running cost for a moment. And with that it's time to move on to the next car. A car that is on the list for the same reason as the Porsche Boxster, the 987 Cayman. Over here we have the Cayman market split by generation and by model type. Prices are higher than in the Boxster market, as a 987.1 costs around $31,000 and a .2 $47,000. Again, there's a big premium for the .2, but if you made it till here in the video, I probably don't need to explain to you why this premium exists. If we look then at the price development over time, we can see that .2 prices are up by 30% since August, while .1 prices only increased by 3.4%. And as you saw, the .2 market is a lot smaller, so this price trend is more sensitive to outliers. Nevertheless, the trends are clearly different, so it's fair to conclude that the .2s increase more than the .1s. There is a separate market analysis video for the Caymans on the channel, so check that out if you want to know more about these price trends. So why might these prices be stable when the market comes down? Well, the reasons are basically the same as for the Boxster market. Supply is low, supply for clean examples is extremely low, and overall is unlikely to increase. Moreover, I think the demand for these cars will always be strong, as they function as an entry point to the Porsche market. And after that quick look at the Cayman market, let's move on to the next car, the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. Who doesn't want to drive around like James Bond? Over here we have the 4.3 liter market, and you can see that there are around 35 cars for sale, and they tend to cost around $50,000. Yet, prices already start in the low 40s. But to be honest, you most likely want to pay a little bit more to get a better example. Clean, well-documented examples are expensive though. They can easily go for more than $60,000. And at that level you can also find the more powerful 4.7 liter examples, but I excluded them for this analysis. Yet, many of the same arguments of course apply to that car. Now looking at the price development over time, we can see that values increased by 19% since December 2019. And that increase sits more towards the low side when compared to other cars. But again, let's ask ourselves the question, why might values be more stable when the market goes down? Well, I think that the reasons are to some extent similar as the one for the Boxster market. Supply for these cars is low, and supply for well looked after examples is even lower. Second, I think the demand for these cars will always exist. Like the 4C, this is a car you buy with your heart and not with your head. Arguably, it's not the best sports car of its time, and certainly not the fastest. You buy this car because the way it makes you feel and the way it looks. Also, it is one of the cheapest ways to enter the Aston Martin market and to fulfill that dream of owning an Aston Martin. And with that it's time to move on to the last car in the list, a car that is completely different from the ones we previously looked at, the Toyota Landcruiser. Over here we have the Landcruiser market, and you can see that I only included the J100 and the J80. The J60 market already increased a lot and is in fact more expensive than the J80s, and the J200 on the other hand can still be quite expensive. The market for clean title cars is small, there are only 80 cars for sale. And surprisingly, prices are identical, notwithstanding the age difference. Both cars cost around $20,000. And also here, we need to keep in mind that we are looking at an old car. The well-maintained examples in excellent condition clearly go for a large premium. Looking at the price development, we can see that the J100 increased by 9.1% between August of last year and now, while this is 4% for the J80. So again, let's ask ourselves the question why these cars might retain their value when the market goes down. As with the other old cars in the list, supply is low, and this goes especially for the well looked after examples. Second, these cars couldn't be more bottomed out when we talk about the traditional depreciation curve. The median mileage is above 200,000 miles and they are more than 20 years old. So you're unlikely to see a significant drop resulting from the traditional depreciation effect. Furthermore, we need to take into account that these cars are quite unique, they are known for their reliability and they start to get a bit of a cult status. Look for example what happened to the J60. This in turn will help to maintain demand. And after those 6 cars, it's time to wrap up and conclude. If the market decides to go down, what reasonably affordable cars are likely to maintain their value? we discussed the 4C, the Focus RS, the Boxster, the Cayman, the V8 Vantage and the Landcruiser. These cars all have a few things in common. To start with, they are close to the bottom of their traditional depreciation curve or have fully bottomed out. So this means that if you were to buy one of these cars, tuck them away in your garage without driving them, you're unlikely to lose any value. Yet, even if you drive it, as you should, the value loss should be minimal. The depreciation per 1000 miles curves are quite flat for all of these cars. Second, all cars are out of production and this limits supply. Moreover, a bunch of them even has no successor, and that makes them truly the last of their kind. Finally then, we also discussed that all of these cars have something that creates a small group of enthusiasts who buy these cars to a large extent with their heart and not with their head, and hereby it helps to keep demand up. Now as you can see, the cars that I included in this list are not the only cars that fit the descriptions. There are many other cars that tick the same boxes. So I'm keen to hear your thoughts. What cars do you think will have stable values when the market decides to tank? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also, before we wrap up, I need to mention that the argumentation in this video is just based on my opinion, and you are of course free to disagree with that. Moreover, as with all predictions, there is a chance that it won't materialize and that all these cars will tank with the market if there is a very serious correction. Whether or not that will happen is a topic for a different video. And with that we arrive at the end of this video. Now if you enjoyed this data-driven way of analyzing car values but would have liked to see an analysis for a different car, let me know the name of the car for which you would like to see an analysis by commenting it down below in the comment section. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I will make a video about it. As always, thank you for watching and I hope to see you next week for a new video.